Being dead felt wonderful. I had an overwhelming sense of being home, of being where I really belonged, and I had no desire to return. I felt this incredible, pure, and complete love of God. I look forward to my future death. I don't necessarily look forward to the circumstances if there's pain involved, but I do look forward to returning to what I know is our real home.
What an amazing story. No one knows what happens at the moment of death, but in this hour you'll meet people who say they have the answer because they believe they've crossed over to the other side and then came back changed forever. Now, near-death states can occur to anyone at any age, including newborns and infants, and remain vivid and coherent lifelong. Now, people who've had a near-death experience often say they've experienced visualizing or experienced being apart from the physical body, perhaps with the ability to change locations. Greatly enhanced cognition, a darkness or light that's perceived as alive, intelligent, and powerful. A sensation of movement and a sense of presence. A sudden overwhelming flood of emotions or feelings. An encounter with an identified deceased person or animal, or an encounter with an apparently non-physical entity. You often have a life review. Information can be imparted, perhaps even through dialogue.
So I'm a gastroenterologist, and I practice and live in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan. I'm a big sports fan.
He became the Rhodes Scholar representative as well as the homecoming king at Ohio State.
What we're trying to do is replicate what you would have, for example, in my office. You want to be real and answer questions that are tough sometimes. Take a topic and really understand it and develop a solution. At the end, we'll help the patient that's in front of us and also help the patients at home as well as in the studio audience. That's the essence of what we want to do.
All right. Thank you for that warm applause. I always appreciate it. And today we're talking about medical miracles. And here today is Dr. Mary Neal. She's an avid kayaker, a board-certified orthopedic spine surgeon who drowned while kayaking on a South American river. She experienced life after death. Please join me in welcoming her, please. Such a pleasure. Thank you for coming. There's so much to talk about, Dr. Neal, but maybe we should just start by saying, what happened? What happened to you that changed your life?
It's a very long story, but in a nutshell, I was in South America. I was in Chile kayaking, and I was pinned at the bottom of a waterfall, and I drowned.
Well, it seems like an amazing story. We can go more into depth. So I read a little bit about Dr. Neal. She's actually an avid kayaker, a very experienced kayaker, and she wanted to go to Chile to kind of experience a different kind of kayaking that you thought you were ready for, and you thought it'd be a nice adventure, right?
Yes, my husband and I have kayaked for many years all around the country, internationally, and friends of ours run a professional raft and kayak company and run trips to Chile in the winter, and we had spoken with them for years about going with them. And so for my husband's special birthday,
really?
we did go to Chile and we kayaked with them, and indeed.
And he actually couldn't go because of some back problems, I heard, right?
He actually woke up that particular morning with back pain, which is something he'd never had before or since.
Isn't that amazing? We have to take a break. When we come back with Dr. Neal, we'll go more into depth and what happened and this amazing experience. Please stay with us.
I could see the guys pull my body out of the river and start CPR, and I could recognize me. I recognized that represented my life here on earth.
When we left you, we were talking to Dr. Neal, and today we're talking about a journey to the other side. There are many skeptics in the medical community about near-death experiences, but more research is now present showing that the mental and cognitive processes may continue for a period of time after death has started. So, even after, quote unquote, you're dying or you're dead, there are mental processes that are still ongoing. According to a recent poll, millions of Americans have experienced a near-death experience. So we'll go back to your experience. You were going to Chile, your husband that morning had back problems, couldn't join you, and then what happened?
Well, I was on the river with as I said, these professionals.
Yeah.
This was not a fly-by-night kind of a thing or an irresponsible thing. And the channel that we had decided to go over was blocked by another boat. And so I was forced to go over the main part of this waterfall. And there was tremendous flow, tremendous turbulence. And as I went over the top, I knew that things were not going to turn out well, but I thought that I would be sort of beaten up a little bit and spit out downstream. But the boat was stuck or pinned in the underwater rocks and features, and the boat and I were immediately and completely submerged under about 8 or 10 feet of water. And I am a spine surgeon. I'm very calm. I didn't panic or that sort of a thing. But I did the things that would either free the boat or free me. And it became clear that nothing would happen. Nothing was working. I knew I was too far from shore for anyone to come and get me. And I have seen other people drown on the river. I knew that even if they could get to me, the likelihood of their pulling me out was pretty slim. And pretty quickly, I realized that I was either going to drown. Well, I realized I was going to drown, and I really asked only that God's will be done. And I really meant it. I, for the first time in my life, gave up trying to control the outcome. We all pray or ask that God's will be done, but we kind of mean, as long as what God has in mind for us is sort of what we have in mind for us.
Right.
But I gave up control of the outcome, and I was immediately overcome with a very physical sensation of being held and comforted and reassured that everything was fine.
Let me go back to one. So most of us who are watching are thinking, if we're pinned underwater, gasping for breath, and essentially dying, was it unusual for you to think that I am not just panicking, not panicking, but it's just not even panicking, but you ever seen a fish out of water? They are struggling. And you're drowning. That physical idea is not even present anymore. That memory is not even there for you, is it?
No, and I have to say that I spent my lifetime fearing a drowning death.
Yeah.
I'm a water person, for sure, but I was always afraid of a drowning death. But when I was actually drowning, I really didn't have fear or panic. I was very focused on trying to free myself. And then I very consciously made this decision, and I never had an experience of air hunger. Yeah. I never had an experience of being conscious and then unconscious. I had the experience of being conscious and focused, and then more conscious and more alive than I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah, you said you felt that comforting. Tell us about this. You felt comforted and supported. Then what happened?
I was taken through a little bit of a life review, and it wasn't a life review in the sense of the Hollywood version of my life flashed before my eyes, which is what I would have had a preconception of. But it was looking at events not in isolation, but looking at how events in my life impacted not the world immediately around me, which is what we can all appreciate, but the effect it had 25, 30, 35 times removed. And it was profound because in recognizing that, you can then look at any event and realize that an event is neither good nor bad. We define things as good or bad based on how it impacts our little world.
Immediate world, right.
But the reality is everything has this incredible ripple effect. And it means that every human interaction, every moment of every day really matters.
Yeah.
So then I could feel my body being pulled out of the boat, and I could feel my knees bending backwards and the bones breaking and things like that. And I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I thought, oh, that must be my tibia. That's probably not good. And
but you weren't hurting.
I was still myself.
You weren't in pain.
No, I wasn't in pain.
It's
I was still
unbelievable.
myself. My little thought balloon off to the side was thinking, this is really strange. I knew that I had been underwater too long to be alive. I felt more alive than I've ever felt. I felt wonderful. And I could feel my spirit peeling away from my body. And when my body broke loose from the boat, I could feel my spirit rise up and out of the river. And it was only when I was there, having been greeted by this group of people, beings, spirits, I'm never really sure what to call them because those names mean different things to different people. But there was a shift in time or dimension so that I could be with them and also look back at the river and I could see the guys pull my body out of the river and start CPR, and I could recognize me. I recognized that that represented my life here on earth. It represented my husband, my 4 young children. And I was really surprised by several things. First of all, recognizing that, well, okay, I guess I must be dead now. that was a surprise.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any preconceptions about death, and I love my life. I had a great life. I still have a great life. I love my husband. I loved my children more than I could imagine loving something on earth.
But this
But
love,
when I look back,
but this love looks like it's actually greater.
it's so pale in comparison to God's love that when I look back at my body, I
Didn't
was
wanna
not coming back.
We have to take a break. When we come back more with Dr. Neal, and she talks about actually crossing over and what happened next. Stay with us. That is amazing. To me,
But then they did give me some information about some of the things I still had to do, including the coming death of my oldest son.
we left you, Dr. Neal was talking about how she felt a little bit guilty because she was leaving, her family behind, and even with that love that she had for her family, this was maybe a greater love. Tell us about that.
I was absolutely overcome with a sense of being home, of being where I really belonged. And these people who had greeted me were people or beings I knew that I'd known forever, for as long as I existed, and I knew that they had known me and loved me. And they were exploding with radiance and brilliance and this absolute love of God. And I knew that they were from God, of God, and were there to greet me and welcome me and take me down this incredibly beautiful path toward this, it's impossible to describe, but sort of this great dome structure of sorts that similarly was absolutely exploding with this pure and complete love of God. And it really is that was so appealing. I mean, I had been reassured that my husband and my kids would be fine regardless of whether I lived or died. But truly the love that I felt for them, the love that I still feel for them, really pales in comparison to this love of God. And
You're a lucky woman because you experienced that and still know about that in this physical world. Because, who else? I mean, we have this, all of us have an idea what God is like and the spirits, but to have this amazing experience, I feel like you're so lucky that you can have that experience and come back on this physical world and still remember that and be able to experience that. It's almost like there's nothing left, everything, you feel fulfilled.
well, it's an incredible privilege, but
Yeah.
it also is the reason why I and most people who have had a near-death experience come back and spend a period of time when they're really depressed at being here.
So I'm sorry I interrupted you, but so you went towards this dome structure, that pure light. Then what happened?
Well, I was on the threshold, basically the point of no return, and could hardly wait to cross over. And I felt like I was there for many hours and was given a lot of information about different things, and was given this incredible understanding of how it can be true that God actually knows each and every one of us, loves each and every one of us, and has a plan for each and every one of us that's one of hope, which is something I'd always struggled with because there are billions of us.
Yes.
But it's true. And then there was a sense of disappointment that descended, and I was told that it wasn't my time, that I had more work to do on earth, and I had to go back to my body. So I did what any reasonable person would do, which is to say, no, I'm not going back. I'm here and you can't make me. But then they did give me some information about some of the things I still had to do, including the coming death of my oldest son. And
They told you about?
yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was given a mandate to share my experiences with other people. and in giving of myself in that way, help other people see God in their own lives. Because it's only when you find God working in your own life that you can make this transformation from a hope or a faith to a complete trust in the promises of God, which changes your life.
When we come back, we'll continue with Dr. Neal's story, and we'll talk about what happened when she came back to the earth and how she dealt with it. Please stay with us. There's no choice.
That process that I realized God really does have a sense of humor. He made me drown, and he made me talk to people.
We left you, we were talking with Dr. Neal and talking about life coming back. So then they resuscitated you, and you're back on Earth, and you're in the middle of nowhere in Chile. And so they're taking you back.
I was in the middle of nowhere on the edge of a river that was very inaccessible. And it's a story in itself how I got from that point to Wyoming, my home, where I then underwent many, many weeks of multiple surgeries and medical care.
Just so you guys know, we have emergency medical care here, and so we try to get to somebody as quickly as possible. So just so you understand, we're in the middle of some jungle, and she has basically been underwater for 30 minutes, and they're cutting down vines to make paths to get her to some place. And she still lives. So there's many points of this you have to say something's going on here, because nothing happens to you. Something happens to you, but you're back almost to your physical health after being underwater for 30 minutes, 15 minutes or so, and then resuscitation for 15 minutes. Then you go through this jungle with nothing, with just, you're breathing on your own. So that also is an improbable thing. Most people would die on the way to anywhere, and you still lived. And then she goes to Wyoming. I just want you to kind of think about all that is impossible here. And we're talking about impossible to completely impossible. All this is just like a fictional story, it seems like, but it's real. So then you go back to Wyoming, and you're what happens then?
So I was in the hospital, and as you say, I mean, the entire 72-hour process would be the stuff of fiction if I had a creative bone in my body.
Right, exactly.
But I don't. And so I was there, and I really spent another week or so with multiple broken bones, horrible lung problems, and I still had no pain. I still felt great. I felt like I had one foot in this world and one foot in the other, and was really struggling with the fact that I had been sent back. I didn't want to be there.
Because you knew too much already.
I did, and
including
ultimately,
that your son was going to die.
Right, and ultimately I spent many, many months in rehab. It was a very long physical and emotional recovery. I was really left as my same analytical, skeptical self. I mean, I'm a scientist, and I spent many months really thinking about my experience, analyzing it, talking to people who were involved, trying to come up with alternative explanations, and really trying to figure out what was it, and therefore, what was I supposed to do with the information I'd been given about my son? What was I supposed to do with this mandate of sharing my experiences with others? I'm a person who is an introvert. I don't like talking to people I don't know. I am not the person who...
Why'd they pick me, you said, right?
Exactly.
Why me?
Exactly. It's exactly the opposite of what I would have signed up to do. And it was really through that process that I realized God really does have a sense of humor. He made me drown, and he made me talk to people.
And you're a water person.
Right.
And so then how did you, so you said you had some depression, but you came out of it.
I did. It took about 1.5 years, and then I finally really just woke up one day and said, okay, I'm back. I have a job to do. I better make the most of it.
And you wrote this book.
And I better be about God's business.
And I wanted to show this book for people who haven't seen it, To Heaven and Back. I hope you can see it well. But tell us, when you wrote this book, I mean, it took a lot for you to write this book. It took a lot for her to even let me put this book up, by the way, just so you're watching at home. She said, well, I don't really have it. Should we have to? I said, yes, because I want people to read about this. So tell me what the experience was reading this book, or writing this book, rather.
The experience of writing it and now promoting it has been one of an incredible journey of what happens when you say, yes, I will be obedient to where God is leading me and do what God's asking of me. And it really has been this incredible privilege.
And tell me about your son. You know, one thing that would crush me is if I knew that my son, is your son okay, or what happened?
No, he was killed 4 years ago.
Wow. And you knew this, you didn't know exactly when, did you?
I didn't know the exact time or day or how it would happen. I had definitely been told that it would happen, and I'd been given really instructions on my expected response to it and how I could help people.
Wow.
Yeah, how I could help people see the beauty not only in his life but in his death. And my son was someone who, when he was 4 or 5, had told me that he wasn't going to live to be 18.
Wow.
And when he had told that to me when he was young, there was something about the way he said it that hit me like a ton of bricks, and I believed it. And so when I was told about his death, when I was on this threshold, it didn't come as a surprise. I wasn't happy about it,
Sure.
But it didn't come as a surprise. And I spent the next 10 years, which is how long it was, every day wondering if that would be the day. And really hoping every day that the plan for his life would change. But having made this transformation from faith to an absolute trust, I had an absolute trust that if the plan for his life didn't change, then there was going to be incredible beauty that came of it, because it was part of God's plan, not only for my son's life, but for our lives, for the world.
And all the people that accept it. It is our incredible privilege to be able to talk to you, because however you express God, or the being or the spirit, you've been touched by that spirit, and to be able to be close to that spirit through you is indeed a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure and privilege.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk with Adam the healer, and he will be in the studio live. Please stay with us. It's amazing. Thank you.
I went up to her room and I put my hand over her head, and I immediately went into this very deep trance. I couldn't see anything else around me except for these vivid images of my mom in front of me. It literally felt like I was navigating throughout her head. And when I started changing these images that I was seeing in front of me, her pain went away.
Back, and we can feel the energy in the room. Joining us now is Adam McLeod. Thank you very much for joining us. He's known as a dream healer. Welcome.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. Tell us, I'll call you Dr. McLeod because he's a naturopathic physician. When did you first realize that you were a healer? When did this begin for you?
It's an interesting story. I've always been very sensitive to energies. I've always been seeing auras. I've always been very intuitive. And it wasn't until I was about 13 years old that I realized that I was sensitive to something that other people were not.
Yeah.
And my mother has had MS since I was very young. I have
very disabling disease, yeah.
Yeah, I have few memories of her as a young child because she simply just couldn't participate in our everyday family activities. And it was a common occurrence for her to get attacks of trigeminal neuralgia. It's a stabbing pain across the side of the face. And this is a regular routine, but once a month or so, she would go upstairs and she would start smothering her screams in pillows, and we would go downstairs and essentially just try our best to ignore her because there was really nothing we could do.
Just wait it out.
Just wait it out, yeah. And one day when I was 14 years old, I went up to her room and I put my hand over her head, and I immediately went into this very deep trance. I couldn't see anything else around me except for these vivid images of my mom in front of me. It literally felt like I was navigating throughout her head. And when I started changing these images that I was seeing in front of me, her pain went away. And since then, she's never had another pain. This is 10 years later, at least, actually 13 years later, and she is completely fine. You wouldn't know she had MS unless she told you.
How did you know to touch her head? I mean, were you just trying to comfort her, or?
Looking back on that day, I have no idea why I did it. At that time, I was starting to kind of, experiment with energy a little bit, because I was just realizing, like, hey, I'm seeing energy and other people aren't seeing this. But
when you say that, what does that mean, by the way, when you see the energy?
It's something that, it's actually a lot easier to see the energy than you think. Like, I'll do a talk to 500 people, and I'll show people how to see the energy between their fingers, and vast majority of the people that talk will see the energy. It's really quite easy to see. But simple exercises like, you get the lighting right, it's a dark room, and you can focus energy between your fingers, and you can very easily see the energy move as your fingers
We're talking
move.
about little sparks and things?
It literally looks, for most people, like a line going between your fingers.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, it's actually extremely easy to see.
And you saw that as a kid?
Yeah, it's something I thought was normal. And it wasn't until, like I said, I was about 13 that I realized that a lot of people aren't sensitive to this.
But you're saying that all of us really have it, we're just not perceiving it.
Exactly. I really, and that's really the focus of my work now, is self-empowerment, showing people how to use this energy to promote their own healing. And I think that we all have these abilities, we just haven't learned how to tap into them.
I had a patient, I remember telling my wife Callie about this. He had 8 cancers in a span of 6 years. And what he would come to me with, Adam, is like, the first cancer was head and neck cancer. He'd say, well, doc, I got this cancer. And he had a plan. There wasn't a plan of maybe I'll survive. It's a plan of how I'm going to defeat this enemy. So then I said, oh, great, he defeated the one cancer. Then he comes back with gastric cancer. Then he comes back with lymphoma. Then he comes back with prostate cancer in a span of 7 years. And his intention was so strong, and it's exactly what you're saying. And I could never explain it. I would always tell Cal, I said, Cal, I'm not sure what is going on with this man. Everything that comes to him, he just kicks their butt. He kicks it, and he says that I'm going to kick. This is such and such cancer, and this is for television. But he'd say, I'm going to kick his ass, and he would do it. And so it's not dissimilar to what you're saying. And until today, I really didn't have a good explanation of what he was doing. And I think he had that power to change his future and his present, in fact. And it's amazing. Now, tell us. We don't have a lot of time, but maybe give us some ideas of people who are watching, some concrete ways of how they can change their lives to have this intention to be used positively.
I think that healing with intentions is a tool that can be integrated with anything. Your immune system is an incredibly powerful tool. Sometimes it just needs to focus more specifically on that specific target. For example, with that patient you're talking about with multiple cancers, he's focused on that cancer, so the immune system is consequently going to be more focused and more effective. But these therapies, for example, just the simple process of visualization, taking the time to focus your mind and your body on healing that problem, taking 5 minutes a day, just that little change is enough to make a huge difference in the functioning of your immune system. And it's really important to incorporate these tools into your daily routine. It's not that big of a deal when you think about it. Just 5 minutes a day of really focusing on that healing can make a substantial difference in how your immune system fights that problem.
Yeah, just don't look at that phone for 5 minutes, and I think you'll pick up the time. So I appreciate you sharing this information with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to take a break, and we have Elaine Grohman, who's a certified healing touch practitioner who works with doctors every day. She'll join us.
As a child, I remember laying on the ground and looking up at the trees and just seeing this light emanating from the trees, and it was the most natural thing in the world. And then I would see it around people, but I didn't know how to differentiate it, thinking that I was seeing what everyone else was seeing.
According to Healing Touch Incorporated, Healing Touch is a relaxing, nurturing energy therapy. Gentle Touch assists in balancing your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Healing Touch works with your energy field to support your natural ability to heal. It's safe for all ages and works in harmony with standard medical care. Joining me now is Elaine Grohman. Please, welcome her, please. Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Elaine, you're a certified Healing Touch practitioner, right?
That's correct.
So tell me, when did you know or think that you could be a healer?
Well, it actually came very unexpectedly. I didn't seek it out. It kind of sought me out.
This is like a theme of the day.
It is.
Yeah, it's like
I
you
think
don't really
that's what
go for
happens
it.
in life.
Yeah.
You know, you have unexpected experiences that are so startling that you can't deny them. I was actually with a family member who was dying. And she had been signed on to hospice in a local hospital, and she was in the end stages of diabetes, so she was in multi-system failure, signed on to hospice care, as you probably know, as care of the dying, and was sent home because her family wanted to be home. So my siblings and I were there as much as we could to help support that, you know, emotional time. And this one particular day, I was just sitting with my aunt, and essentially she was comatose. And I was just holding her hand and thanking her for all that she had done for us, and it was just she and I in the room. And the best way that I could describe what happened was like a light switch got flipped on. She went...
In you?
No, in her. She opened her eyes as bright as can be and looked at me and said, "I see my sister." And I said, "Then you need to go to her, darling, because she's going to take good care of you." And she closed her eyes and went right back to that comatose state, and I felt this in the room. That's the best way I could describe it. Well, that sister that she could see was my mother, who died when I was 13. And it was 27 years after her death. And I was so moved by that experience that I remember actually turning around going, "Oh my gosh, what was that?" And I actually spoke about it at her funeral. And as a result of that, the hospice chaplain came up to me and she said, "Elaine, have you ever thought about working for hospice?" And I thought, oh gosh, I'm not sure I want to do that. Right. But before I knew it, I was a hospice volunteer, and then I became a hospice employee, and at the same time I started to study this phenomenon called energy medicine.
Tell us about that.
So, well, it actually, you asked me when did I know all these things happened in my life, but as a child, kind of like Adam, I saw energy my whole life. And I was, actually my background was as an artist, so I was a trained observer. And I think that that's what's so important for us to know is this is an innately human gift.
We all have it.
We all have it.
And when you say you saw energy, Adam explained it, what did you see?
As a child, I remember laying on the ground and looking up at the trees and just seeing this light emanating from the trees. And it was the most natural thing in the world. And then I would see it around people, but I didn't know how to differentiate it, thinking that I was seeing what everyone else was seeing.
Well, so you thought all of us see those little lights?
Yes. But it was really when I was in hospice and I had the great privilege of being with people at the end of their life. I really realized I was being gifted to be there at this very holy time. And I think that what it helped me to understand is all of life is holy. And that there isn't a single one of us in this life getting out of it alive. So to think that energy is a unique thing only available for myself or Dr. Neal or Adam is foolish, because we are energy. Everything that animates our life is energy. If we look outside at nature, nature is alive because of energy. We are alive because of nature and energy. And I think that it's afforded me an opportunity to look at everything with a sense of appreciation rather than a sense of dread. Because as you were mentioning earlier, asking the other guests, you know, I don't ever think of this as a burden. I think of it as a tremendous opportunity to recognize what our humanity really means.
And what does it mean?
Love. It means love. Not in the kind of love that we're so accustomed to thinking of and bartering for, but love that is energy. Love is the healing force that we're all seeking. And when we start to treat ourselves much more lovingly, then the disease processes that we talk about would probably start to be abated.
What we're talking about, and other people have said it in different ways, it's kind of your approach and how you handle situations. And what you're talking about, and Adam talked about, Dr. Neal, is appreciate every moment. People who are meditators and who are yoga practitioners, acupuncture, are all harnessing, are all doing the same thing. They're trying to get to that stage where you are right now. I think you're there, where a lot of us are trying to be in the moment and appreciate all we have, and to be able to harness that energy, and you call it energy, some people call it the state of mind. It's wonderful, and thank you for sharing that with us. We'll have a little bit more time to talk about some of the things you do in our next session, but I appreciate you talking about this. It's very, very important. Please stay with us with the favorite part of my show, which is questions from the studio audience. It'll be fun. That's amazing.
is with near-death experiences or any experience that involves God, the memory never changes.
We're back now. We have some questions from our studio audience. Yes, ma'am.
How do you know that it's not just a dream?
So these experiences you're talking about, how do you know they're not just a dream? I'll ask Dr. Neal first. I mean, how do you know this whole thing? And I'm sure you asked yourself that many times. How do you know it's not a dream?
Well, the only three reasonable explanations, other than what I know to be true, would be that near-death experiences are either dreams, hallucinations, or just a chemical effect of a dying brain. And dreams and hallucinations have a very different quality of experience, a very different memory of the experience. Dreams and hallucinations are usually very disjointed and really psychedelic almost. And the memory is different. You wake up and no matter how vivid that dream or hallucination, the memory is gone very quickly. And even if you do remember a dream, if you were to describe that dream year after year after year, or not describe it for 50 years, the details would change. The same thing with big events in our lives. The details change a little bit. But the fact is, with near-death experiences or any experience that involves God, the memory never changes. Every single person who has told me their story would say the same thing that I do, which is, we remember the details as precisely and accurately today as if it were happening right now. It's as though we're describing something in the present tense instead of recalling a memory. So it's a very, very different experience.
I'll ask Adam to comment also. I mean, how do we know this is not just a dream? Like, you know, for example, when you're going into your trance, how do you know it's real?
I would say that the biggest reason that I know it's real is that I will pick up information that I could not have known otherwise. Whether it's being drawn to a particular area in the person's body that's where the problem is and I didn't know that, or whether it's intuitive things. I've had visions in the past where I foresaw that these things happening and it manifested, just things in my own life. And when there's that physical manifestation of that dream, it's clear that there's some other connection happening there other than just simply a dream.
Yeah, it's clear also from both of your descriptions. You said it well. When you have dreams, you forget them and the details. Your details are exquisite. I mean, they are to the detail. You can remember every single thing, and you don't forget it. So, I think that's of course people will say it could be a dream, but it seems much more than that. The vividness of it. Yes, sir. Next question.
Do you think most doctors believe in a near-death experience? And Elaine, how do your coworkers treat you about it?
So I'll answer the first one, and Elaine will answer the second one. I think most doctors don't believe it. I think that you're trained scientifically, and we use that word scientific to mean that it's actually better. I'll give you the definition. Most people feel science is better. Wouldn't you guys agree? That word is used even though our science is limited to say better, superior, somehow on a higher plane. So I think most doctors, I think what happens is that you're trained to be that way, and as from a young age, you're kind of put in this path with blinders on. And when somebody takes off those blinders, it's an incredibly different world. And it's like all of a sudden you're swimming in the Atlantic and you've never done that. And you have two choices. You can try to navigate that, or you get the heck out. And a lot of people get out of the Atlantic. And that's how I view it. And I would ask each of you to say, do you think most medical professionals embrace your ideas?
We're trained to save lives, correct. And every time someone dies or we think about death, we have failed.
That's right.
And so I think it's very difficult, but they have the experience of patients seeing relatives, seeing angels, having conversations, and they have a very different experience because they are at the bedside when a person passes.
Very interesting. And Elaine, what was the second part of the question? Would you answer that?
Actually, I have had the privilege in the last 12 years to work with medical students at both University of Michigan's Medical School and Wayne State University's medical students, as well as Madonna University for hospice and nursing students. So I think that it's a different population of students now that they already have been exposed to perhaps energy medicine, intuition. They know of this. It's out of the closet, if I could say that.
Yes.
You know, we're experiencing our own humanity. And I think it's so refreshing to me when I have physicians come up and say, can I tell you a story about what happened to me? And it's like we have to not think of physicians as a subset of humanity.
Right.
They are people who have a chosen profession. And that chosen profession maybe is narrowing their focus for a particular reason, to be more scientifically minded and very analytical and diagnostic. But the rest of their humanity is not abated.
Right.
You know, so we have to remember these are whole people. And we have to know that we are not just professions walking in. We're one human being experiencing and witnessing another human being.
That's wonderfully said. Thank you. You know, we have to take a break. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to share your experiences. It's been phenomenal. Thank you. I really appreciate it. When we come back, we'll have Partha's prescriptions. Please don't go away. That's great. Well said. Now today, we heard some incredible stories about crossing over and the power of touch. What can we take away from today's Partha's prescriptions? You know, a near-death experience is a distinct, subjective experience that people sometimes report after they're clinically dead. Medical research is starting to verify that brain activity may be present after death. Although medical miracles do exist, do your research. Do not participate in therapy without consultation from your medical caregivers. Also, healing touch therapy may be useful in balancing your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Ask your doctor if this is right for you. Finally, spirituality plays an important role in the healing process and brings together mind, body, and spirit. You know, for more information on medical miracles or to revisit any of the information covered on today's show, visit our website at www.askdrnandi.com. Also, we'd love to hear from you. Join the discussion on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Just search Ask Dr. Nandi. Lastly, there's a beautiful word in the Hindi language that literally means the light in me honors the light in you. And that word is namaste. So namaste to each and every one of you. Thank you for watching. See you next time.